All right, here we're doing one on Pabiti Kamani. It's a strange set of rock formations in one small area known as a micro desert, one of the only few that are in Europe, and it shows a strange anomaly, an oopart, and there's so much around what the possibilities that this is and is not. I'll just try to just go into it and let it reveal itself to you and the strangeness of itself. In Bulgarian, it's known as planted stones. And so this is an idea like Johnny Appleseed. No, more like an idea that could be, Jack and the Beanstalk, or an idea that these stones were planted. Well, early farmers had come up with this name of this idea that these stones were planted and they grew. And there's a few local folklores that's about this, and I'll get into it later, but also known as the stones of the desert is a desert-like rock phenomenon, but located on the northwest Varna province in Bulgaria. And that's on the eastern shore of you can look down here and see it's on the eastern shore of the Black Sea and up into the mountain ridge ranges that are here, and you can kind of see here what it looks like. Not too much different than a few other structures like, well, let me not compare it to other structures. Let's just continue. It's considered to be the only desert in Bulgaria and one of the only found in Europe. Citation needed. Well, you don't need a citation. There's this Tiberius Tabernacle Desert, which is a strange name to have far off in Spain till you realize that its name used to be Tartarus. And then we have a thing called Tartaria, and it's God, I'm going to go off in left field real bad if I don't stay on. Let's just reveal this site here. The desert consists of sand dunes and several groups of rock formations in a total area of 13 kilometers, and that's about 5 square miles. It's really just a micro, little bitty area that's screwed compared to the surrounding area. And what it looks like whenever you get into the pictures here, it would look like somebody stripped the land in an area maybe almost to the point of 40 kilometers, and then it swallowed back in, but it became a desert. It was a micro dust bowl, Oklahoma, or something along that situation. And this had apparently happened too long ago for them to easily discern that this was caused by mankind and everything. And due to the anomalies that are there, they've left it wide open. And pretty much, looking at the wiki article here, it pales in comparison to what some research has shown. But then again, half the people that have made decent comments on this site are no longer respected in the community, and many of which are older and passed away. But anyhow, so citation needed. There's not any deserts in Europe except for over in Spain. There's an area there, the Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns were filmed out in that. That's in Spain. I know it looks like Southwest America, doesn't it? Yeah, it's about the same thing, only it's not huge like the area of Arizona, New Mexico, and into Baja and so on. It is just a small 5 kilometers around. That's all it is. The desert consists of sand dunes and several groups of natural rock formations. The formations are mainly stone columns between 5 and 7 meters high and from point 0.3 to 3 meters thick. So there's some that are around a foot all the way to the point of 10 foot, and there are a few that are bigger, that are together, and smaller, and things like that. And it makes it look odd in many other situations. You look at it too. The columns do not have solid foundations, but are instead hollow and filled with sand. And that's not necessarily true. Not all of them are done that way, but some of them are done that way, and then the capping on top doesn't have a hole in it. But if you knock off the thing on top, the whole flute has a hole in it. But the little thing like the cap on top, like you see in this little bitty picture here, this little topper here, this mushroom, if you will. There have been people that say this is plants, this is um, uh, it's some type of prehistoric, or not prehistoric, it's some type of petrified special plant that is hollow in the center and but is huge in different sizes, but it would have been only in this one certain area. No one ever seen anything like it. It's quite strange. Anyhow, they look as though they were stuck into the surrounding sand, which gives them the phenomena its name, or the planted stones. The sandstorms and sand twisters have also been known to commonly occur in this desert area of Bulgaria. The stone desert is not only well-known European tourist attraction due to its desert-like habitat, but it's also one of the few places where desert-type vegetation such as cactus are known to grow. It's also the only desert in Europe, um, along with the Tabernas Desert. There you go in Spain. Is one of the two natural form deserts in Europe. Citation needed, I don't think so, but and the only known natural formed desert in Eastern Europe. In order to be preserved, Pabiti Kamani, the desert or stone desert, was designated a natural landmark in the early 1930s, in the late 1930s, I'm sorry, and there are a number of those theories regarding the phenomenon's origin. The pioneering hypothesis can be divided into roughly two groups, so pay attention, suggesting an organic or abiotic origin. So this was an idea like it was petrified or some type of vegetation that had grown, perhaps even like dinosaur trees, and they got covered in mud and left, but then right around them that formed little circles, and then the sandstone got worn away except for that one little tube parts. It's a strange theory, but back then people didn't have a good grasp on it as well as we do today, as we feel we do today. So according to the former, the formations are roughly the results of coral activity. Now, I know about corals and coral growth, and there's nothing that would grow really straightforward corals that would grow up like this and not try to grow on the sides of and expound. And corals grow calciated skeletons. The only problem is this is limestone type formation, but it seems sedentary, and it seems rapid sedentary. And then there's another form that I'll talk about in just a second too, and that doesn't lead for the idea for there to be coral formations, although those smokers that they found in the deep bottoms of the ocean that are putting up chimneys. So this could be something like that, but they wouldn't have come from here. That's the weird thing, is like someone transported them here, because this doesn't come from here. In fact, this hasn't been in the ocean. This is pretty high up. I think it's 1,300 meters or whatever above sea level. The Black Sea, and the Black Sea is a couple of 100 miles away, as you just saw, so, and this is up on hills, which we'll look at in just a second. So this is, no. So how does that form? Well, according to the former, the results of the coral activity, but it shows that there are really no coral. There's no embedded corals growing skeletons. You can see that whenever you can see that it's been growing under life. So while the latter explain the phenomenon with prismatic weathering and desertification of the rocks, the former of sand and limestone concretions are lower Eocene bubbling reefs. So now they would have an idea that there would have been a sand formed into limestone, but it was bubbling up, percolating from reefs or from uh, the ground, percolating through it in each of these little bitty spots all around. I'll show you in a minute. I just, wanted to get you an idea. It might have been better to show you a few shots and then go crazy on it, but after they give you these ideas. But try to remember these concepts and see what you think they're saying here. And so it would have been Eocene reefs, and way back then, from 56 to 39 million years ago. Okay, but was this area under land underwater back then, and was it deep enough to have formed some type of situation and then came up and then got the area it was in ruined? Well, we know that this area wasn't a desert like 6,000-7,000 years ago. So was it? They're saying it was desert before then, though, too. Okay, and sealed up, and these tubes are full of sand. Okay, and it's sealed over the tops of many of what these would have been plant type coral formations that are tubular. Doesn't exist though. Anyhow, based on a petroglyph and stable isotope geochemical study of field observations, evidence exists that these structures represent an exceptionally record of paleo hydrocarbon seep system. So now it would have been sandstone and then had a seep system, like it's a cave that forms stalagmites. But instead of being a cave that forms stalagmites, it would have been a shell ground over sand, and then where it percolated through the sand, it formed stalagmites in the solid sand. And then when the sand all wore away, pow! Okay, you follow me? They say low magnesium calcite cements are strongly depleted in heavy carbon isotope 13, and that's the statement that they give forth whenever they give you these readings that say they are from about 4500 BC to as much as 22,000 BC, and then these other guys pull off this 5 million BC dating, this Eocene, as being as the earliest, and going all the way back to 56 to 33 million years if it was going to be this type of structure that it had formed the way that they're trying to give that it did. So you get these wild variations on this idea of what may have happened. Now, let's see, the pathways of fluids set in sands, which columns after recent sand removal gave desert-like sandscapes, is what they're saying, and I'm not following that one at all. The dynamic reconstruction of origin of the process of fluid migration and microbial mediation of hydrocarbon oxidating leading to carbonate precipitation have been studied by De Bover and others in 2009. And that's great that they've studied that type of idea, but wow, it's like they haven't put enough thought into this to try to give a better idea of anything. The only reason, so you can see this is made up on hills, right? You can see this. And the strange formations here are not uniform, although this size is the same size as this size, is the same size as this size, and this one is the same size as this one, and that one, and this one. And then the smaller one in front of the other one here is the same size as this one, which is real close to that one for some reason, and then the one that has fallen down. It's so there's somewhat symmetry, but not quite. It's not like everybody's trying to make them exactly the same column, right? Or it doesn't form exactly the same size column, but there is some type of subset that they've noticed. And of course, this is just looked off. There are sedimentary lines that are showing in the weathering in some of this rock, and it always shows at an angle. And if you look back at here, the cracking and at an angle and at an angle and at an angle from lower right to upper left, and even in the what looks pretty much straight is still slightly cantered up, right? You can tell that the top of this almost looks like it's got brickwork in it, but no one's given credit for that, for something that looks like it had been concreted formed brickwork. But you can see that in the hollow of this, just at the very top, and the tops are very much more weathered than the rest of it, showing you that it was exposed only to the tops at first, and when they dug down they found all this, but they quit. And why did they quit? Well, there's anomalies with it, and then nobody wanted to be involved, and they backed away from it, kind of, it seems, in a way, and nobody wants to give up their career for putting their ideas on a line. Look at this pillar right here, and you can see there's a distinct hole through it here. Well, what you'll notice also, if we look at these other pictures, is that this looks almost like a hearth and a chimney going on. It's got a hole cut on it, and the whole inside is hollow like a chimney, right? Although the top is full up with sand. Sand. There's hollow in the inside, though, and at the tops of these, some have been capped off, and this is just one little area, but you can see this goes back hundreds of yards, looking like this. Well, let's look at the next picture. I'm sorry, I want to show you one more thing there. When we look at this, you can see that this almost looks squared. Can you see that line? And this is almost squared. And then you look at like this, and it looks like it's been scalloped like a pillar and scalloped around it. But the other ones don't look like that so much. But if we look real closely, there's some weathering signs that look like there almost might be some writing on here, and you start to, I don't know, I guess you see pictures in clouds and things. We'll look at a bunch of other pictures here shortly, but you can see this sedentary layout and how it has a symmetry to it, but in a capping stone type of idea. And it almost looks like there's been engraved a giant C on this. It's just all weathered away, right? How long would it take for limestone to get looking this bad? Well, the problem with this area is it gets snow a lot of times, and it does a 23 degree float. So it'll be at 30 degrees breaking freezing at nights, and then boom, it'll get up in the 50 degree range, and it'll do this for a lot of times, and then get colder, warmer. A lot of snow gets in there. It's not necessarily in a valley situation, and you can see in some of these other pictures around it the growth that is not in this area as opposed to what you can see in the distance everywhere you look. So it's a micro desert. It's strange. I mean, there's some nice trees and things, but in this one little area there's desert creatures that don't exist in anywhere else, and jackals and all kinds of things. So you look at these pillars and you can see somewhat a uniformity of them, and you can see that they look like they have a ribbing on them, and a ribbing on them a little bit, like they have that, and that it wouldn't be just erosion always giving this ribbing effect going down, but then and almost a fluted column effect. But if we were to take a limestone fluted a column effect there, it would date somewhere around that 22,000 years, and that doesn't fit in anybody's little. They just walk away from that real quick. They go, oh, yeah, who made a hole through this? I mean, this is literally a pillar with a hole through it. And it does look from this end like a jagged off, cut off tree, doesn't it? And it looks like it could be petrified wood, only petrified wood doesn't look like this. And this is what we know today as concrete. This is a limestone embedded with a bunch of other stones and stuff into it, and it's not a natural coral formation. It's odd. But then there are other ones that have holes in them like this here, and it has two holes in them, a smaller third all around this pillar. It gave them this idea there was a mud flood in the area around certain primordial plants, and then it caked and baked and then washed away, but what was stuck around them somehow, and then sanded up, and then nobody ever found it till now. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't smell good. That just doesn't smell good. So let's look at this other angle of it here, and you can see that this is hundreds of yards in the other direction, and this one little area up in the mountains, and the ocean. I don't know which direction it is from here, but you couldn't see it. You have to get up on the highest mountain and maybe see it through a valley situation, but pillars lining up and lining up and then lining up, 1 2 3 4. Now see, the weird thing here too is that some of the pillars seem to be somewhat uniform. Let's just give an example that they're 20 foot apart. So let's say, all right, this is about 20 foot apart, and this is only about 21 foot apart, so that's about 20 foot apart, and this is 20 foot apart. Wow, so there's 3 in a row that are actually, so you can get a measurement there. The only problem is there's one out of line, and the next one in line is 14 foot. And what is that? And so it's not lined up like old pillars used to be, and it surely wasn't one uniform situation. Or how do people have put this together? It's strange, and it's a limestone-ish formation that just doesn't make too much sense. And you can see these, and these look like these chimney smokers, and they're hollow and they're full of sand. And did they dig this out in old caveman times and dig it out and then put a body down in it? Did they do that? What is this here? They can see odor of lichen on here, and then the patina of the rock of some of this, and it's also dated to some 20,000 BC, and that's just a guesstimate, and weathering and everything too, and it also puts it within that same range. Then the people say that the rock that made up this formed some 56 million years ago, and it would have been a coral type of formation. And then other people discount that totally, and they say no, it was this seepage formation that would have been the same thing. And they go, yeah, well, that didn't happen right here apparently. Is this natural or is it not? And this is from Wonders of the World. Okay, so that's where you get this idea from. Let's take a look at some more pictures of it here that we have. Vlad VT1, I'm sorry, 9VT, has done a video, and you can see where this location is on the map again, right? And the way that it looks. And so we're just going to take a look at this. It's probably going to flag it here. Shown on a ridge. So you can definitely see the ridge that is formed on. If you look at there real closely, you can see on the left there's some right, there's some, and it's all through this one ridge that's right there. And there's a uniformity to some of these. Now, the strange thing here is that no one knows when, but somebody made crop circle or a hinge or a astral calendar here and there too. And there's you can see the circle around that, and you can see the circle around that. And uh, placing stones in a circle isn't necessarily a coral formation or anything dolphins are known to do. And was this all buried under sand for so long? Was this some Sodom and Gomorrah that got taken away real quick? There are people that say that used to be a face, and it's all eroded away, and of course you can kind of see that. But pillars with holes through them, all of right here. These are three that are in a row that we're looking at there. Only the middle one just isn't in line, and they're the equidistant, but the one in the middle just isn't in line. And you can see this lining effect again, and you'll see some of these with this lining effect on them. And now you can tell that someone had been here and cut out this cave right here and all of this crosshatch work. And I don't know if you remember my similar crosshatch work, and there were pockets in the walls. Looked like you could almost put a scroll or a votive or something, or a skull, into these pockets, but it doesn't have them fully done into here. There's a circle symbology here, slits that are cut into the rock, which could be natural formations. What can't be natural is the square formation and this door and the cave that's here. And it looks like there was another door set up in that, but not. Looks like a snake facing up, perhaps. And there's his eye and there's his mouth. But then also from here down, it's hollow, and from here up, it's sealed. Does that make any sense to anybody? Again, can you see the fluted colonnaded effect? And in other places, there are stones that are worked that very much don't look like they're columns. But other ones, in this picture alone, here's a column with a hole in it, column with a hole in it, column with a hole in it, column with a hole in it. Of course, this could be 2 or 3 pieces of the same one that was right over here and broken off. But look, it's up in the mountains. Some columns are far too close together to add a reason for it. But then again, if you have a house next to a house, here's a cave which clearly has been worked. And other things that they just call natural formations, that you might see something that looked like that at the bottom of the ocean, but you wouldn't see it. Pardon me. And here's a chimney rock where it's got a rock placed on top of it. And if you'll look in this shot, just about to go away, that has a slight rock, that has a slight rock, and supposedly every one of these are hollow between. And then you look at something like this and see how it's hollow in the inside, and they've carved out something hollow. It looks like this looks to me. And then there's even a door facing right here. You can see how there's a door facing, but then just a smaller cutout. And I don't know if you can tell in here, but you can see light into there. Well, not from in here, but going down the tube, you can see light in here. This one has been broken off, so light's getting in there, but this was solid. This was not tube. But then also look at this little scribble. Looks like it could have been writing. I mean, hey, for all we know that, the ancient crusades or whatever may just smooth off all of this rock and trying to get people to believe all kinds of different things. A million things come to mind when you look at this semi-fluted rock. It looks like there could be writing written all over this. But then again, it could be just your mind playing tricks on you. Right? What do y'all think? Tell me over in the comments what you think about this place. It's definitely shows some type of oddity. You think of a giant mushroom fairy forest that petrified, but it did so a couple of million years ago, and this is all we see of it. You look at this cave setup, and you can tell that's been worked. These tourists are going up and in it and everything, but sure, there's sand in there, but it's 5 miles square, and it's trapped right off in the middle of this. And why would the people have tried? Why would people have lived there? Is it the reason it was abandoned? Desert, it's the root of the form deserted. It shows you where people leave and they don't ever come back. And here's one view of it from one side. You're standing on a hill that looks pretty much like that over here, overlooking it, and there seems to be not quite a uniformity to any of it. And what do y'all think? It's because my book mentions 3 things, not just 2. So petrified forest, siltification forming sand tunnels that would have been like, you know, pillar making. So this area would have been covered with sand some 18, 20 foot deep, formed a crust on it. Crust had cracks. Whenever it rains, it only goes through that. When it snows on there, it melts through that, and in doing so, why would it form tubes? Has anybody ever seen this? It formed an exact tube that never fills itself, and it decides to grow a tube, of water. Is that the way it works? It's rushing through the middle of it, so on the outside it calcifies. Well, so there's a whole lot of water going through this, percolating. Is that what we're left to believe? Strange. How much weathering would there have to be if this was made fairly good? Fairly good, like Stonehenge. You look at rocks like this, and you can almost see the vein going off here and here that would have been like a root, but that's not a root. That's just a little wiggle in the rock. Is that a calcification forming? This wiggle going down here? Look at this mushroom kappa rock. Kappa rock. Half kappa rock. Fell off. And you can see it's up on a hill. It's nowhere near it would have ever been in the water. And there's the view from the other side of that ring that's just sitting there. And people say, well, someone back in the primordial times made this ring, and they may have lived around it, but it's a natural formation. And I look at all these pillars and these holes and these things, and I go, it doesn't look like they didn't. If you say it's natural, that's one thing, but it looks like it's been highly impinged upon by somebody, to say the least. And look at the smoothness of the pillar and the way it runs around a corner. What would that have been, though? And again, there's that same picture that shows that it looks, it's a hollow column. Now, Rowan columns have a pinnate put into them to run through them, but they don't have that. These are just tourist pictures over the years, but as far as you can see that way, it's there, running all the way down to this way. And there's that cave that's built into it too. Somewhat seems a natural formation. That's a twisted column if there is one, but somewhat close. You look at this and it looks like it's worn away colonnade. Even has the topper on it, but is that a natural formation? For that's the one that looks like a snake from the other side, and it doesn't really look like a snake, but you can see his mouth. But when you look at it from this side, it's got an eye and it's got its whole thing there going on. But this is solid, but there that hole in the side of the mouth goes down in, and it's all full of sand. And every one of these that are broke open and broke topped are apparently all full of sand. There's another one of those tri-shaped, and it's been dug into where it has a hearth type situation. And doesn't some of this look like it had writing on it? Like that it had symbology, writing, and squared off areas and everything in this one area. But now weathering is just ate it away. It's been exposed for far too long. How long? Well, some estimates say 22,000 years. That doesn't fit anybody's book at all. I wonder if now we found like Göbekli Tepe, if anybody's going to be willing to come out, further than that, because there was another roundscape, by the way, but 2009 is the information that's put in that wiki that's on that. It's on a Wonders of the World from 1983, re-edition from 1962. I have. These are more modern pictures, though, and you can almost see in here a round colonnade built in, and then what would have been a road that goes, and a road that goes, and then notice how these structures are all built in a line going all the way here, and this area leads into that area, and down there there's just hundreds of them down there too, right? Connectivity. You look at this site from over, I'd love to see some footage of going over the top of it, with a drone type of thing. But what the problem is that none of these columns, these two are stuck together. That was that smokestack that I talked about in the very first place. But then there's a gap. Well, that's where people go in and out at, and then here they are close together, close together. Well, there's not one missing there. If we look, is it collapsed next to it? Well, these two are too close together, and these are far apart, but these three are about the same distance apart there, and then there's a gap. Oh, well, that's where another people came in. Okay, but these aren't all in a line, and not exactly, and they're not spaced apart evenly, and then all of a sudden they're all spaced much more farther apart, but almost uniform, except for these two are real close together, and there's three close together right there. See, so and if three close together meant it went this way, and now the wall goes this way, we don't see that. We could dig all down up under here and see if there's just some broke off ones all down through here, but other than that effect, there isn't. There is nothing that attaches that. What is this? What do y'all think in the comments? I mean, do you think I'm just speculating too much? I mean, your mind wants to see one thing, but then something like this is a strange anomaly. From another direction, you can see that ribbon right there of some of those colonnades, but then again, when you get close and look at them, they're not in line, and these three are spaced evenly apart. But the problem is that one is not in line. It would be over here, and if it was over here, it'd be almost spaced evenly apart to the next one. And what the hell is that one doing there? Lines in a lot of them. Shapes, it almost, you almost want to see shapes in a cloud. Holes drawn through columns. Looks here like, I swear this looks like, now, go with me again on this idea. Egypt, there's a place that looks just like this picture that we're looking at, right? There's actually three, I guess, that would kind of look like that, where we look at some of the scrapes and some of the other things and some of the colonnades and how they were put together in pieces broken down, and some of the quarry type situations. So if it wasn't like a desert for that long, they'd be a lot more weathered. Of course, they'd be less sand blown, but they would be, how long would it take if you looked at Egypt 10,000 years from now? Would they start to look like that? If you had the weathering that we talk about being on the Sphinx still going on to this day, would those structures look like this? How long would it take before things started to look like this? 10,000 years? 20,000 years? Albeit granite is much harder than limestone, and so it's going to last longer, but there's going to reach a point of erosion where it starts to happen and it goes. Strange anomaly. Just thought I'd throw this one in there, shed some light on the subject, because tubular columns, some of them in groups, some of them a hearth, and they haven't changed too much. This is an old black and white photograph from the 1900s early, and modern. You look at the erosion amount on this rock and this limestone, and it looks like there has been cut definitely some channels into that, and what would look like an H. And if you did a half-assed job like that on something and it was fairly smooth, and then you set it on the ground here, how long would it take before it eroded to where it looks like that? You can see a lichen impregnated in the stone like crazy. But say somebody showed up later and they did that, somebody showed up later and they drew up pictures on them, right? Somebody showed up later and they did that, but this is from 56 million years ago. Snakehead sticking out of a rock, almost looked like a sphinx situation. And yeah, it snows there. You can see snow on the ground there, snow in the desert. But there's that crop circle again, or that calendar type circle. And was that much later? Was that something that's been around for a long time? Did they pick three out and they lined up and then they made a circle around it and they say, let's use these? And what time did they do that at? A lot of questions, very few answers. That's why I don't like this video as much as the other ones. I try to give people a lot more answers. But what do y'all think this is? Do you think it's from 22,000 years ago? Do you think humans created this? And how do they create these concrete tube things? How do they create these chimneys? Balanced rocks. But are balanced rocks always human intervention? I doubt that very few of them are. They might have been something that was praised by people. They were like, look at how funny this is. But that natural caves, is that a natural mound? Is there anything under that mound? Because it looks like it's been piled up. And if that eroded away to where the top fell down, why didn't it hit the ground? How could it have fallen just so perfectly on top of itself